Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another tropical update by Agent Weather Forecast. In this video, we're not going to be talking about the North Atlantic. We're going to be talking about the Eastern Pacific, and we have a lot to talk about. We now have two current invests at the moment and another AOI with a 30-60%. So we do have a medium chance as well. So we may see a third invest at the exact same time in the Eastern Pacific as the MJO does pass through the Eastern Pacific and heads for the Gulf of Mexico region. We're going to be seeing a ton of rising motion overall, just a ton of overall great conditions within the region. So definitely going to keep a very close eye on whether these can all become named storms. And if they do, definitely the Eastern Pacific will be far ahead of the Atlantic, which does not happen that many times. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. So here's a look here at the latest 5-day tropical weather outlook by the National Hurricane Center, and as you can tell, we just have a ton of areas of potential development. We have two high risk of or high potential or high probability of development. There's invest. This is 90E. And this is 9, actually, yeah, I believe this is, actually, no, I believe this one is 99E, and this one is 90E. Let me actually confirm that very quickly. Alright, so actually I was right. So yeah, this one is 90E right here, and this one's 99E, and this one is not an invest just yet, but it will most likely become 91E. So we're actually we're kind of on track, basically. Obviously, the Eastern Pacific is more ahead when it comes to storms. I believe we are tied when it comes to the actual index, and obviously the Atlantic has already gone back to 90L. So we're basically tied invest-wise. A lot of those invests in the Eastern Pacific became storms, unlike the Atlantic. So that's why we are ahead name-wise in the Eastern Pacific. However, as this MJO in a kind of tropical monsoon large easterly wave moves towards the east, of course, we're going to start seeing a better condition across the Atlantic very soon. And once we get towards really mid-August, the Eastern Pacific will be seeing a very unfavorable atmosphere. So right now, here's a look at 90E. 90E has a 90% for the next 48 hours and a 90% for the next 5 days. So actually, although 90E obviously formed after 9090, there is more confidence that 90E will form sooner. So we are seeing a satellite indicated tropical storm force winds are occurring on the east side of the elongated low tropical system. So there actually is, or there already are tropical storm force winds here located 700 miles southwest of the southern tip of the Baja California Peninsula. So we're going to continue to keep a close eye on this. An improvement in the organization, the circulation would lead to the system being designated a tropical storm. So obviously this has the winds. It has a tropical storm winds, however, the structure, and there's not really much low-level circulation or even a closed low at this point, so that's exactly why it has not just been named yet. However, it most likely will be named quite soon, and that's why we have such high confidence in that. And then, obviously, we have an 80-90% for 90-90. This is located about 1,300 miles southwest of the southern tip of Baja. As well, there's pretty good confidence here. We have some pretty good thunderstorms are starting to obviously organize and just become overall more tropical-like, and there are still mostly combined to the southeast of these centers, so still kind of a bit more lopsided. Upper level winds are expected to become more conductive for development during the next day or so, and a tropical depression is expected to form over the weekend while the system moves generally westward at 5 to 10 miles an hour. So obviously, this, I believe, 90E will most likely become Guillermo actually, which is the next storm here, and then most likely 9090 will become Hilda, which I believe as well is right after Guillermo. So that's exactly what we're watching out for, and obviously now this newly formed AOI, or area of interest, now has a 30% for 48 hours and a 60% for 5 days. And I believe this did pop up yesterday, so we're going to be seeing some disorganized showers and thunderstorms around an area of low about a few hundred miles off the coast of southern Mexico are associated with a tropical wave, which is obviously the large MJO we are seeing. We're kind of seeing, I guess it's an easterly wave, I guess you can call that. Gradual development of the system is expected during the next several days, and it could become a tropical depression early next week. So this thing, we're definitely be seeing possibly pretty active week as we get into Sunday the next week here. We may see 3 systems, whether they're 2 depressions, 1 storm, or 3 storms and 0 depressions, or Once again, two storms and one depression. So by possibly Sunday, we may see three formed systems that are in the Eastern Pacific at the same time. This is just showing you how the MJO can affect just development, just conduct development so quickly. So here's now a zoomed out here on the looking at the IR forecast or IR satellite imagery on the Eastern Pacific, and you can kind of see the overall area of the tropical wave. You can kind of see this is the more conductive environment as a result of this MJO as it pushes eastward. Obviously, it was in the Western Pacific basically a week and a half ago. Obviously, the MJO is it kind of affects the vicinity of a large region for either 30 days or 60 days. So it's not the fastest moving tropical wave, obviously. That's why we see such development over a good time period, a month or two, because of MJOs. And that definitely we saw it kind of in the Indian Ocean and the Western Pacific at the same time. We kind of see just obviously some pretty intense systems over there. But now we're starting to see the same thing here in the Eastern Pacific as it moves eastward. So here we have Invest 99E right here, 90E right there, and the other, or not Invest, but the other AOI or area of interest right here just off Mexico as a few hundred miles. So obviously, just think about 99E's further off Baja, 99 or 90E second furthest from Mexico, and 90, or not, sorry, that's not even Invest, sorry, and the AOI 3060 is closest to Mexico. So you can see overall, out of all three of these tropical or these areas of interest, 90E is definitely the best looking system here. We have a lot more widespread cold cloud tops kind of towering up here. So, I mean, we're seeing some pretty strong updrafts, obviously, within these thunderstorms, and we're obviously seeing some lightning within this area of convection. But like it mentioned, there's really not much low level circulation, nor is there really a closed circulation as well. So it's kind of, it has the winds, obviously. It's got some pretty intense thunderstorms overall, and it has decent structure. However, that low is quite open. I'll actually get it more zoomed in 90E, and then of course right here with 90, it's kind of self-explanatory why it's not a tropical storm or depression. It's very disorganized. It's more scattered tropical thunderstorms, kind of all over the place with some scattered convection. And there we have the area of, as well, pretty widespread convection there, and potential gradual development likely in the next 5 days, or basically the next 5 days within that new AOI. But let's now go ahead and get a more closer view and zoomed in view in 90E. So let's go ahead and get here a visible look and more zoomed in look on Invest 90E. And actually, I want to look at the satellite imagery instead of IR, so you guys can get a look here where this potential low pressure is. So obviously, the last time we got a look at tropical dip low pressure's location, I believe that was 18Z, which is obviously around 2 hours ago. So that's really not necessarily accurate. I actually think that this low pressure is actually north of this convection. You kind of see some decent low level circulation, basically right here in that latest run there. So obviously, it's quite open. There isn't any dry air to really worry about because we don't have any dry air because of the significant MJO. You're going to see later in the video that there is so much moisture around this. Exactly why we're seeing three systems potentially develop within the same wave, because that wave is not just one little wave of a moisture bubble. It's a massive, obviously, MJO we're talking about. So there's no dry to really watch or really worry about. However, again, we still have to have some more better low level circulation as well overall closed low. And this low is not closed. However, it could definitely get its act together possibly tonight if it goes through a diurnal maximum. So I would not doubt this gets named within it be either 2 or 3 advisors, obviously, as long as it gets its act together. But overall, there is a lot of convection within the system. So here's now a look at the 18Z model intensity guidance for Invest 90E. Like I did say, they already did find, I believe, on was it ASCAT, they had already tropical storm winds. However, like I said, since it's really not really organized or really has a structure to really give it a name, that it's most likely going to stay as an Invest. Very high likelihood of development with very soon. However, there's definitely a good chance this could be named very soon here, possibly by tomorrow. So it's likely going to be a hurricane. There are some trends where this is becoming maybe a moderate to possibly low end category 1. We do have a few models that kind of want to keep this staying at a low end tropical storm, at least when it actually becomes confirmed. So after it becomes confirmed and actually named, they want to have it such as the EGRE, the UK. Kind of want to have it staying at tropical storm status. However, the majority want to get to a hurricane. Kind of see all the models that want to get to a category 1. Looks like here that the H-Wharf wants to get this to a category 2 as well as a COTI. So there are 2 models that want to get this to a category 2. However, I personally think it's very, very unlikely. However, I do think a mid category 1 is definitely possible for Invest on the E. If anything, it's going to have the best chance to become a hurricane. It's going to be 90E. However, the thing is, very interesting is that these systems, all 3 systems, are going to be very, very close. And I'm going to show you guys something very interesting very, very soon here. But it's definitely quite interesting how close all these 3 disturbances are, since they obviously are within a very closed area in the MJO, and it's kind of certain specific area where we are seeing conducted areas of development. But category 1 possible for Invest 90E. Track wise, obviously going to go out to sea and make its way towards really the west, northwest, and northwestern hinterlands. Invest 99E, let's see here, intensity guys as well. There is a lot less confidence on this being a tropical storm anytime soon. However, maybe by the next 48 hours, we can definitely see an area maybe getting to the tropical storm status. And again, very unlikely that 99E becomes a hurricane, and as well going to go out to sea. Alright, so for those who are wondering why the Eastern Pacific is blowing up all of a sudden, when it was kind of dead after Felicia, we didn't really have much development, and now we're talking about possibly 3 tropical systems, whether it's a tropical depression, a tropical storm. Well, it's obviously because of a pretty strong MJO we are seeing at the moment. So all this is basically sinking air. So we are seeing some sinking air, which is very good, obviously, and conductive for tropical development. While we're seeing now, since the MJO has moved far east from the Western Pacific, we're now seeing some, oops, guys, I think I said sinking air, oops. Alright, so all this blue air is rising air. I actually said sinking air. That's my mistake. I meant to say rising air. So these blues and purples and pinks, any negative digit here is basically those negative zonal winds. We're kind of seeing those, I guess you would say, those easterly winds, basically, which is very good, and obviously showing that there is an MJO. It's kind of see the same thing to look for Kelvin waves. However, we already know this is MJO because we know the MJO's development. So we kind of see these easterly winds here. So we are seeing these negative BPUs, which is basically indicating we're seeing, I believe, a good amount of, we're definitely seeing a good amount of convergence within this region. So again, all these blues are indicating a lot of divergence, and basically we are seeing that rising air within this region, this is really good for development. Those deeper and steeper colors we're seeing, so these pinks is definitely one of the best conductive areas to see development. It's exactly kind of where we are seeing those 3 AOIs, and obviously that's exactly why the Eastern Pacific is going kaboom, because of the MJO as it pushes eastward. So we're most likely seeing the Atlantic start blowing up quite soon because the MJO is on track to move into the Western Hemisphere very, very soon here, according to the future MJO tracks. And like I said, there's going to be a lot of rising motions, exactly what I'm about to show you guys. You see all these greens, and those like lemon lime greens and dark forest greens and all that. Basically that green is basically all rising air, and we see a lot of sinking air now in the Western Pacific, and now sinking air is going to start becoming more actually likely in portions of the Eastern Pacific as we get towards the beginning and actually end of August, 23rd of August, and maybe even by 18th of August, we're going to start seeing some sinking air within the region here, and that's exactly what we're going to be seeing here at the moment in the Western Pacific, as the MJO has moved out basically around a week and a half ago. Now we're going to start seeing that sinking air behind it. So very good conductive conditions until really the, I guess, second week of August is where we're going to be seeing the conductive rising motion within the Eastern Pacific. So that's exactly why we're seeing those great amount of systems starting to pop up now in the Eastern Pacific. And obviously, we're going to start seeing that rising air move into the portion of the Western Atlantic and Caribbean by portion of the Gulf of Mexico very soon. Quick interruption, as I'm recording this video, 99E has now become Tropical Depression 9E here, looking at 30 miles an hour. This is the first advisory, and that most likely means Hilda will most likely still be 90E, even though that 99E did form first. It's so unlikely that's going to be a tropical storm anytime soon with the next 12 or 18 hours. I do think at that point we'll be seeing Hilda for 90E here. So I did make a mistake. I thought Guillermo was the next storm because I've not really kept up with the Pacific lately. But it looks like Hilda is the next storm and not the second next storm. So it looks like 90E will become Hilda, and we now have Tropical Depression 90. Let's go back to the video. Let's now look at the GFS here. So we are going to be looking at the 18Z, or this is actually 12Z GFS. And you can kind of see there we have Invest 90E, 99E, and there we have that other AOI right there. GFS has more confidence at this point in Invest 90E forming first at 997 millibars by the next 45 hours, and actually has really nothing for 99E anytime soon, even though it's funny since it just became a tropical depression. And the next 75 hours, basically 3 days from now, we have 984 millibars set in place for potential Hilda, which will be 90E, of course. I do doubt Hilda will form as 99E. I really doubt it, especially since it's becoming tropical depression like legit right now. And then we start to see some more vorticity and overall tighter winds and those closer isobars right there within 90, or basically now TD9. So it looks like by August 3rd, the GFS has more confidence within that region for TD9, and then we have kind of really very little confidence. I guess the GFS has little confidence for anything related towards that new AOI. And another interruption as we speak. 90E, which I've been saying will be Hilda, is now Tropical Storm Hilda. So there we go. It looks like 99E though will become let's see here, that will be Ignacio actually. So it looks like we're going to be seeing Ignacio very soon here. Possibly that will be related towards 99E. And then after, if maybe that AOI becomes anything crazy, we'll be seeing Jimena, which actually is my best friend's name. So that would be quite awesome if that forms become Jimena. So this will be obviously already Hilda. This is obviously going to be here Ignacio, and then we'll be seeing possibly if this AOI can get its act together, which it looks like the GFS has little confidence in, that will be Jimena, getting to letter J very, very soon here. So Hilda is now at 45 miles an hour. So basically skipped being a depression, it skipped 40 miles an hour, and it completely jumped to 45 miles an hour. And that's obviously because there were tropical storm winds basically there the whole time. So we're kind of seeing there at 1,003 millibars and moving west at 16 miles an hour. So expected to possibly become a hurricane here. And let's actually get a look here at the actual discussion for the actual peak winds. So like I did say, ASCAT did find those 30 to 40 knot winds there on the east side, and they finally made it official. So basically, the National Hurricane Center wants a decent Category 1 peak at 85 miles an hour. So that is definitely very, very interesting. I would not doubt the possibility if this does get even to 90. Like I did say, I did mention Category 1 was possible. We did have 2 models get to Category 2 in the first 18Z run. That was H-Wharf, and I forgot the other one. I believe it was ITCO, something like that. But we're looking at 85 miles an hour. I would not doubt does that strengthen or get up to 90 miles an hour. But obviously, definitely going to keep a close eye on it. I do doubt Category 2 still at this point, but considering how strong the MJO is and how much rising air there is, and obviously how much divergence there is, I wouldn't rule out the possibility. So now it looks like these the models that I've been using in the beginning of the video are now kind of outdated now that we saw a TD form during my video and a tropical storm. And it's funny, I feel like my video was going through 2 days, because when I first made my video right now, you guys saw it was just 3 AOIs. Now we have a TD and a tropical storm, just 1 AOI. So I feel like everything has just changed at this point. So a lot of these models are kind of outdated at this point, but the European kind of has, of course, these 3 systems actually all forming. European wants both 3 of them to possibly form, while GFS is very inconfident what I was gonna say though, when I said something very interesting is that the European may want now Hilda and the new AOI to do the Fujiwara effect, which is basically that they kind of, I guess, merge together, which is extremely rare. I believe if anything's like if it's within 1,000-ish miles, that Fujiwara is possible, but still very rare. But it's definitely likely. You can kind of see it's two very clear different lows of strong convection and strong vorticity and low level circulation, and then they just kind of combine together and it becomes a stronger and larger system. So I think that the Europeans actually show the Fujiwara effect happening, which is extremely rare. Let's look at the GFS now, 10-meter wind knots, which is obviously going to be very inaccurate because they are really struggling to have 99E get acted together, even though it's now a TD. And obviously, let's see here what they have for Hilda, and they only have basically 40. Actually, never mind. That they're actually decent with the winds for Hilda, but they want to get Hilda up to around 71 knots, which is basically 81 miles an hour. So the GFS is actually not far off at all for Hilda's peak strength. So obviously very interesting. And like I did say, there's really no dry air at all. You can see that large MJO, extreme amounts of moisture. So there should not be a single problem at all when it comes to dry air.